Kakalosh Boker Tov. We're continuing with Daf Lamed Chet Amud Aleph 38a1. We're just going to start though on Lamed Zayin Amud Bet. Lamed Zayin. Today's 37a1, but we're just going to start on Lamed Vav Amud Bet, right, which is basically the last line of 36. It says, Tan Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita, En ofin pat ava bepesach. You're not allowed to make thick bread on Pesach. Divre Bet Shammai. These are the words of Bet Shammai. Bet Hillel matirim. Bet Hillel says that it's going to be mutar. Okay, that's the shita of Bet Hillel. Okay, v'kama patava. What is the shiur of patava that Bet Hillel says that it's going to be permitted and we're not going to suspect for chametz? So Amar Ravuna says tefach. That means even if it's going to be 8 centimeters of thickness, it's going to be okay. Sheken matzinu belechem apanim, because we found in the Bet Hamikdash that you're not allowed to bake chametz, and the lechem apanim was a tefach. So therefore, you could make a bread the size of 8 centimeters, and it's still not chametz, and it's still not going to become chametz. Okay? So Matkifla Rav Yosef comes and he asks, Im amru bezrizin, yomru b'she'enan zrizin? Again, the same question that we learned yesterday. You remember yesterday we were speaking about the concept of kohanim. Kohanim are zrizin. They're quick. They're always running. They have to be, on the run. They have to be on the go. Yeah? So therefore, what happens? In the Bet HaMikdash, the reason why they were able to do it until a tefach was because they're kohanim. Kohanim are zrizim. They're going to make sure that it's not going to become chametz. But you're going to tell me that in any other case of a scenario that it's going to become chametz, that it's not going to become chametz because they're not zrizim. They're not kohanim. A non-kohen, any person, he's going to start making matzah and he's going to make it until a tefach. Maybe it will become chametz. By a kohen, I understand they're quick. But here, whoever told you, imamru bepata melah. Yomru bepat she'ena milah. He says, what about also? There's another thing here. Not only that the kohanim are zrizim, the lechem apanim, there's a lot of people that are doing the kneading. And since there's so many people doing the kneading, and they're coming and they're doing so much, it's not going to become, right, chametz. I don't know if you ever went to a matzah factory. It's something incredible. You go into a matzah factory, they have the dough, and you have to see every single second, the dough is being beaten up. You know, beaten up, misken the dough. You understand? Every single second you had, I still remember, there was like a table with this big metal like a stick, and you put the dough, and you're bam, 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 and then you fold it again, and again, bam, 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 until you don't give it over to the next guy. The entire time it's being beaten up. There's no such thing as the dough is nothing being done, right? The dough is all the time there are things being done. So you have one guy coming. He mixes the flour and the water, right? So one person puts the flour, another in the water, boom. He starts doing the kneading, boom, throws it off. One batch, splits it up, next batch, continue going, and they continue throwing them. Mamash, like not the throwing mamash, but they continue giving them out. Yeah, and then the second that they're running, right away, bang, 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 bang. The second that the other table is ready, they run to the other table. In the middle of there, they're still, playing around with it. They get to the table, he cuts it up into a few pieces, passes the first group. They come and they start making it, right? They start opening it up, flattening it. The second group, even flatter. Third group, by the time it comes to the last group is only with that little tiny machine that they come and they go like this, with a whole bunch of holes. And it makes the holes on the matzah, but it's already mamash flat, completely. And then they come, another guy, boom, picks it up, puts it in the oven. And then that guy in the oven is the one taking care of taking it in the oven, out of the oven, and so on and so forth. So mamash, you see, there's not it's pata milah. It's mamash your amelut. Yeah, you're working in it. So he says yomru bepat she'ena milah. Im amru be'etzim yerashi. Not only that, the lechem apanim was always baked with wood, which are very, very dry, and therefore because it's very, very hot, so it has to make it that it actually cooks. It bakes very, very quick. Yomru be'etzim lachim. Are you going to tell me that with any other type of etzim lachim, any type of moist wood that you would use as firewood? Which means that, and again we continue going. Imamru betanur chametz, they're going to say with something which is very, very hot. You're going to say with a tanur which is cold, which obviously it's cold only just in comparison to the fire, right, of the Bet HaMikdash. Imamru betanur shamatechet, if you're going to tell me it's something which is made out of metal, because the majority of the ovens were made out of, it says over here, the majority of ovens were made out of earthenware. And that's what it says here. The lechem apanim had to be in an oven which was made out of metal, and therefore was much more hot. There was much more heat. So basically, if you realize that if Yosef comes and he's asking that how could you compare the lechem apanim that we permitted you to make it until a tefach and there's no problem with chametz, how do we permit you to do any Joe Schmo is going to come and make this bread, which is the size of a tefach, and there's no problem. Look at all the differences. Look at all these things to do with lechem hapanim. Okay? Yeah. Amar Rav Yirmiyah, says Rav Yirmiyah bar Abba, Sheilit et Rebbe biyichud. Shalti et Rebbe, right? Biyichud. Biyichud here means by ourselves, right? Sometimes when you want to ask a question, you want to ask it biyichud, right? With nobody around. There's yichud here. So he comes and he asks him, Umanu, right? And who was the rabbi of Rabbi Yirmiyah? Because Rabbi Yirmiyah comes and he says, I asked my Rebbe. Who's his Rebbe? Rav. V'ika de'amni Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba amar Rav. Right? And some people say that there was another version. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba amar Rav says, Shalti et Rebbe biyichud. And who was it? Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yudah Nasi. That was called Rebbe. Right? And he was the rabbi of Rav. So nevertheless, he comes and he asks him a question. And what was the question? My patava, what exactly does it mean, patava, thick bread? So he says, pat merubah. He says the kavanah is a lot of bread. Not that it means thick. It just means that there's a lot of bread. Okay, so he says, so my karula patava. So why is it called thick? Right, just say pat merubah. Why is it called patava? So it says the Gemara, mishum denefisha b'lisha, because when you're making the kneading is very, very thick. And then they come and they divide it into many different pieces of bread. Meaning, when it says thick, it doesn't mean thickness when you're actually baking it. It's thickness when you're making the dough. The dough is very, very big and thick. But then afterwards, they separate it. There's pat merubah. There's a lot of bread, but then it's not thick anymore. Or if you want, you can answer. In the city of this Tana, pat merubah, a lot of pat was called pat ava, but it wasn't a be'emet. It was really a tefach. You understand? Meaning, it wasn't talking about it was a thick bread. There was no thick bread. Okay? Until here, we're clear? So, my tama, what's the reasoning of the Yisur according to Bet Shammai? Why can't I make be'emet thick bread? You understand? I want to make a very thick, pita bread. And I want to eat pita on the first matzah. Why can't I do that? So says the Gemara, right? He says like this. My tama, what's the reasoning of Bet Shammai? If it's going to be because you're going to do a tircha, right, that you don't want, which means that you don't want to do it because it's not tzorech yom tov. Meaning, right, by the way, you should know, this goes according to whether it's the opinion of patava, meaning the thick bread, or pat merubah, where there's a lot of bread. So now, what do we just mention? We just mentioned that you can't do pat merubah. Patava, I would understand the reasoning of Bet Shammai. Patava, why wouldn't you do it? Because maybe it's going to become chametz. If you're going to leave it to become so thick, it's going to become chametz. What about pat merubah, though? If you're going to tell me it's matzah, right? A lot of bread. A lot of bread, but it's not thick. It's not patava, it's pat merubah. So then we ask, why is it called ava? So why is it called a lot of bread? Many different breads, many different matzot. We're talking about matzot. Huh? No. Different matzot. You made tons of them. So the question is, what is the reasoning? If it's going to be because you were doing tircha that you didn't need, because obviously, why are you making so much bread? Saying you don't need it for Yom Tov. So what are you doing now? So my idea be Pesach. So what do I care about Pesach? Even Yom Tov also. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to start cooking for not tzorech Yom Tov. I still remember somebody once asking, Rabbi, I want to make bread on Yom Tov. Are you allowed to? So technically speaking, yeah, why not? So can I make for now for Shabbat as well and for the next week and for 2 weeks? No, because you could only doing the cooking or the baking, whatever it is, for tzorech Yom Tov, right? So the same thing, the same halacha would apply. You understand? It doesn't exist. You can't do that for anything else. You understand? So he says, what? Tzorech Yomo. So he says, afilu b'yom tov acher, even b'yom tov nami. Inachenami, he says the answer, you're right. But here we're talking about Yom Tov or Pesach. That's why he brought it down. But in Achanam, you're right. You could only do the amount that you actually need for Yom Tov. You can't start doing extra. So Tanya Miyachi also went to right. Bet Shammai omrim enofim patava b'Yom Tov ubetilen matilin. So you're right that it's not only Pesach. It's on any Yom Tov. That means on any Yom Tov you're not allowed to do a lot of pat, right? Again, because now we're learning that the word explanation patava is obviously a lot of bread, not thick bread, because you're allowed to make thick bread on Yom Tov. Meaning thick bread, it's only might be an isur on Pesach because maybe it's going to become chametz on a regular Yom Tov. What's the problem? Okay, but Betilel says you're allowed to. So Tanur Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita, yotzin bepat nekiya. You're allowed to be yotzei chova with pat nekiya, right? Which is basically matzah, which is made out of very fine flour, uvehadra, and matzah, which is made out of like coarse flour, uvisrikina mitzuyarin, or matzot that have different images. That nobody ever did yet. You understand? Ronen, maybe you want to go into the business. Yeah, you're taking notes. Yeah, he said that basically matzot that they have images on it. Meaning, imagine you're gonna have a matzah and you're gonna have like a picture of Yitziat Mitzrayim on it. You understand? Like it looks cool, no? Like think about it. It's an interesting one, huh? Well, that's what it says here.
It's a good selling item.
It's what?
It's a good business for the
Yes,
kids.
that's why I told him, look, he's taking notes. What do you think? Everything that we talk about?
You need to ask for commission, Rabbi.
Oh, for sure. I would have become rich many years ago already. Yeah. Ronen says, thank you for the business advice for me. So he says, Uvisrakina mitsuyanin, or matzot, that they have different types of tsiyurim. Yeah, that's what it says over here. Matzot mtsuyarot. Here it says, demut yonav dagim v'shar tzurot. Whether it's a demut of a pigeon, fish, or other tzurot. I would have done of Yitziat Mitzrayim and things like that. That's what I would have done. You know, it looks cool, no? You imagine you have, like in the...
How can you do that?
Why?
Kriyat Yamsuf.
The machine matzah. So you put it in the machine that when it's going to make all these types of images, right, the holes or whatever it is that you're going to come, that you're going to have a form, it would look a little bit deeper or more imprinted or less imprinted, and it looks like a shape.
Then the kids won't sleep for the Haggadah.
Ah, very good. The kids won't sleep for the Haggadah. Right. It goes on top of it. It rises, and you have like an imprint. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Okay. You see, he's already got it. That's it. You see, he already has everything done. Yeah. I'm gonna get the copyright in a few minutes. You spoke to the Chinese. You spoke to Chinese. Can they make it? Okay, fine. Now it says,
send the link to the to the patent legal department.
Yeah, he's already doing it. Yeah. He said you're already too late. He did it already. Yeah. And you see, within 3 minutes that we're talking, he did it. Uvisakinam tsuyanim bepesach. Kohanim vizimhem. Very good. Kol hakavod. Kol hakavod. He's on the ball. Yeah. Afal pi she'amru, even though they said eno sin sakinam tsuyim bepesach. This is the reason why not. I broke the patent. It says here yotzin is b'diavad. Yotzin is b'diavad. Yeah. You have to call them back. Yeah. It says here why. Because Amru Chachamim that lechatechila eno sim sekinim tsuyim bepesach, as we're going to explain why. But b'diavad you use chuva. So Amar Rabbi Yehuda says davar ze shel baitus ben zunin lachachamim. Right, this was of the nachtom to the chachamim. Mipnei ma amru eno sim sekinim tsuyim bepesach. Why be'emet can't you be yitzei chuva? Think about it. It's an incredible business. People would love it. You understand? So he comes and he says, why wouldn't he do it be'emet? So he comes and he says the following reason. He says, why amru lo? He says because the woman that she's coming and she's doing it, she's going to start coming and making the images, and by doing the images and not putting it immediately into the oven, she's going to make it into chametz. Meaning nowadays it would become actually much more easier, because nowadays, right, if everything's machine, so if the machine itself is going to do it, you could probably do it very, very quickly. In the olden days, a woman would have to come and actually have to make that drawing in the matzah. So for her to do that, the fact that she's going to be waiting in order to do that, that will make it into chametz. So Amar Lahem, so Baitu said to Chachamim, Efshar sheyasenu b'dfus v'yikbeena. Why can't you do like what Ronen just said? Make it on a dfus, make it on like a mold. You understand? You make it on this mold, and then you just put it on top of it, right? So he says v'kivan, and then that's it. It's going to go very, very quickly. It's not going to come to chametz. Amrulo, they told him, Yomru kol hatzirkim asurim, u'sirkei baitus u'natuni. They're going to say what? All the drawings is going to be prohibited, but only the drawings of baitus is going to be permitted, which means the rabbis didn't want to show favoritism, even though technically it would have been permitted mitzad adin. They didn't want to show favoritism. Listen, anything that comes from Amichai's matzot are prohibited, but if they come from Ronen's matzot, it's permitted. You understand why? Nah, they didn't want to do those things. You understand? So prohibited is prohibited. That's it. They didn't want to give protexia. There's no protexia. You understand? So therefore, that's it. So Amar Bilazar bar Tzadok, says Bilazar bar Tzadok, I once went into after Abba in the house of Gamliel, and they brought in front of him Amarti, and I told him, Abba. Yeah, he said, Abba. Didn't the rabbi say Amali, he said, Beni, my son, shel kol adam amru, right? Ela shel nachtomin amru. They didn't say that about every single person. They said that in nachtomim, which means the nachtomim, which are like the bakers, they do it in order to sell. And therefore, they're so makpid that it should look properly. It should look nice, you understand? So therefore, there I'm going to suspect that since you're doing it so nice and professional, so therefore they would take their times. We're not makpid. So if you're going to make some matzah at home and all of a sudden you're going to start making a tzura, what do you care? Yeah, there's no problem. It's not for sale. You're not going to be makpid if it's not 100%. You understand? So ikadamni, there are those that say, this is what he told them. Lo shel nachtomin amru, ela shel kol adam. The opposite. The nachtomim, they're experts in what they do. And therefore, why? Because they have these fusim, they have all these molds, and and therefore you're not going to suspect for chametz. And therefore they didn't prohibit it only for other people. So it comes out that basically we have the flip. We don't know which one's the correct version, because some people say that the nachtomim, the bakers, were prohibited and the houses are permitted. Why? Because the houses you're not makpid, and the bakers you were makpid to sell it, so therefore you're going to take more time. And some people say the opposite. Bakers were permitted because they were experts, and in the house you're not an expert, so therefore you're going to take your time and it's going to become chametz. So Amar Rabbi Yosef says Rabbi Yosef, Osin sikin kemin netikin. You're allowed to come and make. You're allowed to come and you're allowed to make srikin, which is again these matzot which are mitsuyarin, just like rekikin, which are very, very thin. But you're not allowed to make it of glue scout. Glue scout is like a thick ones. Okay? So basically, I guess there's two different versions, and I guess that's why we would have to find out exactly what's going on. It says it's mashma that you don't do it at all. This is hey. It's in Orachaim Siman Taf Samech Siv Daled. We would have to look it up halacha l'maseh, but that's what it sounds like. Tanan Hatam, we learned over there in the Mishnah, Masechet Chala, Hasufganin. Yeah, so imagine you got like a sfog. You've got like different types of that. Basically, it's like sfog, a sponge. What does a sponge have? Usually, sponges has small little tiny holes. So therefore, it's got also. It's a type of a bread that's very, very holy, right? I don't mean holy as in holy, holy. You know, kodesh kodeshim. It means that it's got holes, right? So you have the holy. Yeah, it's got a lot of holes. Okay, what is it called? Perforated. Okay, perforated. Right? It's basically what we call belilar raka. When you have a cake, a sponge cake, why does it have so many holes? Because it's very runny, the dough. So they're airy. Okay, right? Okay, fine. Airy. V'aduv shanin. And it's a type of a bread which is actually going to be mitugan b'dvash. It's going to be fried in honey. V'isтрikritin. And another type which is also going to be mitugan b'dvash. V'chalat masret. And also machvat, we're going to explain what it is. V'meduma. Chulin, which come mixed up with truma. All these things are pturim min chala. So remember, anything which is fried is patur min chala, and that's the reason why it becomes mizunot. You remember we spoke about frikasseh. The frikasseh of the Tunisians is mizunot because they take the dough and then they fry it, and therefore it's going to be pturim min chala. So it's going to be patur chala. Maran does bring down, if you remember, like sufganiyot. Exactly. You come, you make a mizunot on it. You don't make a motzi. Okay. My chala masret. What is chala masret? That they come and they throw it into boiling hot water. You remember we spoke about that yesterday. Which is chalita. Chalita is you take the dough and you throw it immediately. That's how you make bagels and all those things. You put it immediately in boiling hot water. Okay? And then it's not going to be making like regular bread. Amar Shakish says Shakish, halalu, all of these things, ma'aseil pasen. These are not baked in a regular oven, like regular. It's actually made like in a pot on the fire, just like bishul. So that's why it's patur min chala, but it's not baked in an oven. Rabbi Yochanan says, "Ma'aseh pas chayavin." No, you are chayav in chala, even if it's done in a pot. But these things, asan b'chama, you did it in the sun, and that's why it's going to be patur from chala, because it's not. Sorry, thank you. Right? It's not done. It's not done in a regular fire. It's done in the sun. Meitve, so we're going to ask the following question: when we're talking about sufganin du shirim miskretin, asan bil pas. If you made it in the pot, you're going to be chayav in chala. If you made it in the sun, you're going to be patur. So this is a tiyuta of Shimon Lakish. Is against Shimon Lakish. This goes according to Rabbi Yochanan, but Resh Lakish was the one that said that the only reason why it's going to be patur is because it's been done in a pot and not in the oven. Rabbi Yochanan says no, even if it was done in a pot, you would be chayav. But these are done in the sun and it's not done in the oven. That's why it's going to be patur. So there's a proof against Resh Lakish. So Ula says, Shakish is going to answer you. What are we dealing with? Shirtiach, that you heated up the pot, ulvasofit bik. But then afterwards you went and you put it on the pot's walls, just like you do it. That means usually you're using the pot like an oven. And you heated up the pot, and when the pot is boiling hot, you come and you put it against the walls of the pot in order to heat it up, instead of putting it against the walls of the oven. And that's why it's the exact same thing. Aval, however, though, if you first stuck it to the walls and then you heated up the pot, what's salacha? You should be patur, right? You should be patur according to you. Adatani seifa, but that which we learned in the seifa san bechama pturin, that if you did it in the sun, it's going to be patur. What are we arguing that in itself? But one of these words, only if you first heated up the pot and then you put it on the walls of the pot. But if you first stuck it to the pot and then only afterwards you heat it up, it should be pturin. So the fact that the Tana did not make a differentiation, it's mashma that there's no differentiation how you did it, whether you first heated up the pot and you put it, or you first stuck and you heated up the pot. It's always going to be chayav and chala. So says the Gemara, no, we're lacking part of the Braita, and this is the way you're supposed to read the Braita. But one of these words, only if you heated up the pot and then afterwards you stuck it to the pot. But if you first stuck it to the pot and then you heated it up, it's like you made it like a nasan, upturin, and it's going to be patur. And therefore, this is actually going to be like a proof to Rish Lakish. Okay? Very good. Tashema. We learned in a Braita. Yotzim b'matzah hina. You're going to be yotzei chova with matzah, which is not 100% baked. It's not, it's a little bit raw. Uv matzah siya bilpas, or in matzah, which is going to be it says over here matzah that it has to be like lechem oni. So he says if it's going to be made in a pot. Now the question is, here it's written in Fudash that matzah which is made in a pot, right? It's 100% bread because you're going to be yotzei chova. So says the Gemara, hachenami, for sure. When? So if you first heated up the pot and then you put it on the walls of the pot, for sure. But then Rish Lakish says it's like a regular bread, and that's why you're going to be yotzei chova. My matzahina. What is matzahina? I'm going to be Mishmuel. It says Mishmuel, if you're going to break open the challah, then chutin in shachin, but you don't have pieces of like the dough, which are like chutin, which are like threads, which are coming out to it. Which means that means that that's the matzah you're going. But if it is going to happen, that's not baked at all, and therefore you're not going to be tzedek chova. So Amar Rava says the exact same halacha applies to lachmei todah, the breads of the korban todah. Okay, that means basically if you're going to come and you're going to slaughter the korban, right? The breads were already baked into such a thing that they're going to, and the chutim are not actually going to come out. It's going to be kosher. But if not, so then it's not considered bread, and therefore they didn't become holy. Okay, they didn't become kodesh. So says the Gemara Pshita, obviously. It's written lechem by both. One of them was written by matzah lechem oni, and also by lachmei todah. It's also written lechem. So therefore, if you're going to be yotzei chova with matzah ina, the same halacha you would be yotzei chova with lachmei todah in such a fashion, because it's both called bread. Bread is bread. So says the Gemara, I would have thought to say holuktiv since it's written by lachmei todah v'ikriv mimenu, right? What does that mean v'ikriv mimenu? Echad mikol korban. You have to bring one for every korban, which means every single one of the lachamim are going to be taken and they're going to be waved, right, by the kohen, right? We're on Lamed Zayin Amud Bet. We just turned to 37b. If you remember, every single one, there's 4 different types of groups. Remember, 40 breads, 10 of each, 4 different types. So one of each is going to be waved with it. So it says, Echad shelo yitol parus. So you shouldn't take a bread which is going to be, you have to take a bread which is basically going to be shalem and not parus and not cut. So here it's considered like it's already cut, because since it's not 100% baked, so therefore I'm going to say that it's not properly done. Kamashmalan comes teach you that since the chutim do not come out, when you break open the bread, it doesn't come out like threads of dough, so therefore it's considered actually baked. Okay? Meitway, we're going to ask the following question. Hameisa, which is basically, we're going to explain what this is. Bet Shammai says it's going to be patur from challah, and Bet Hillel says you're going to be chayav in challah. Hachalita, it's another type of isa, right, which we're going to explain in a minute. Bet Shammai mechayavin, Bet Shammai says you're going to be chayav, and Bet Hillel says you're going to be patur. So the exact opposite. What is meisa and what is chalita? Hameisa kemach shel gabe megulashim. Kemach that they put into boiling hot water, right, and then they come and they make out of the boiling hot water. It's called isa. Okay, that's called the meisa. Hechlita is muguloshin shel gabe kemach. You put boiling hot water on top of the kemach and then you knead it together. Okay, so basically the first one was the dough was a normal dough that you put it into boiling hot water. Okay, that's called muglashin. Chalita, which is not the muglashin, was the opposite. That you poured a hot boiling water on top of the kemach and then you kneaded it together. That means you kneaded it with boiling hot water. Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yosei, Rabbi Mishum Aviz says Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yosei, the name of his father, Zeh v'zeh liftur. Whether we're talking about meisa or chalita, it's going to be patur from the chala, right? Ve'amila, and some people say Zeh v'zeh lechiyuv, that it's going to be chayav in chala. Chachamim come and say no. Echad zeh v'echad zeh. Both of them, doesn't matter whether you first made the dough and then you put it into boiling hot water, or you first put the boiling hot water into the dough to make it into a dough. Asam be'ilpa says the Chachamim, if you made it into a pot, you're going to be patur. If you did it in an oven, you're going to be chayav. The Tanakama, and according to Tanakama, that he was making a differentiation between misa and chalita, whether it was the first you put the hot water or first you put you kneaded it with the hot water. Maishna misa, maishna. What's the difference then, bemet? Some of you Meshua says Meshua, v'chanam Rav Yochanan says Rav Yochanan. V'itam Meshua Levi, some says Rav Yochanan Levi. K'machloket bazu, kach machloket bazu. It's the same machloket, which means that the ones which are going to be poter this are going to be poter that. V'tavra, and you have to break the stira, the 2 different cases, right? Umish shenazu lo shenazu. So whoever taught this one didn't teach this one, which means the first Tana that said Mi'isa is exact same din chalita. It's the same halacha. And therefore, Bet Shammai says you're going to be patur from chala, and Bet Hillel says you're going to be chayav in chala. According to the second Tana, that he said chalita, he said the same halacha would apply to Mi'isa. Bet Shammai says you're going to be chayav, and Bet Hillel says you're going to be patur. But it's always the same halacha between them, meaning there's no difference between the two cases. We made a differentiation in the first Braita. We made a differentiation between the chalita and Mi'isa. It's exact same halacha. So whoever taught one didn't teach the other, and then he said hu adin, and each one is learning a different concept. Ktani mihat, however, though we learned Chachamim say, echadze vechadze, doesn't matter whether it's talking about the Mi'isa or the Chalita. If you did it in a pot, you're going to be patur, and if you did it in the oven, you're going to be chayav. So to the Rabbi Yochanan, this goes according to Rabbi Yochanan. Because Rabbi Yochanan says the Masei Ilpas, you're going to be chayav in chala. And here you're saying if it was done in an ilpas, if it's going to be done in a pot, you're going to be patur from chala. You're going to be patur in chala. And Rabbi Yochanan always said you're going to be chayav in chala. So Rabbi Yochanan is going to answer you. It's nahi. It's a machloket tanaim. Tetaina was learned in a braita. Yachol yehe mi'isa v'chaluta chayavim b'chala. I would have thought that mi'isa and chaluta is going to be chayav in chala. Okay, so he comes and he says, "Samulomar comes teach you lechem." What does that mean? Rabbi Yehuda says, "En lechem ela afui b'tanur." The lechem is only going to be something which is going to be baked in the oven. Rabbi Yehuda hainu Tanakama. So Rabbi Yehuda is the exact same shita as Tanakama. What did the Tanakama say? Right? What was the difference between them? Both of them said that the mi'isa v'chaluta is not considered bread. So elalav rather masei ilpas. The difference between them is masei ilpas. If you did it in a pot, Tanakama holds masei ilpas. You're going to be chayav in a pot. And Rabbi Yehuda holds you're going to be patur in a pot. So obviously that means Rabbi Yochanan is going like the Tanakama, that you're going to be chayav if you do it in a pot. And Rabbi Yehuda says you're going to be patur in a pot. So says the Gemara, no, that's not the machloka between them. According to everybody, ma'aseh ilpas, if it's done in a pot, you're going to be patur, which is like Resh Lakish, not like Rabbi Yochanan. But over here, but here the question is, you did it in a pot, and then you baked it afterwards. That's the machloka between them. The Tanakama holds, since you came and you again baked it again in an oven, lechem karim, it's called a bread. Rabbi Yehuda holds, that there's no bread unless it's going to be baked in the beginning. Meaning only from the beginning it's going to be baked, then it's going to be considered bread. But since you didn't do it at the beginning, it's not considered bread. And by the way, you should know, this would be an afkamina for bagels and sufganiyot and all the other things. Because first they throw it into the boiling hot water, and then they bake it. So if you're going to tell me here, right, that again, or you put it... What? Bagels is amotzi. It's true. Bagels is amotzi. Obviously, we're going to have to see why. I guess we have to see according to this halacha. Yes, because it's fried. Fried is not a problem. But here the question is, do we say that you're going to be chayav, or it's going to be chayav in chala or patur mi chala, and that's going to be a difference over here. Okay? So Amar Rava comes and he says, "My ta'amad Rabbi Yehuda." What's the reasoning of Rabbi Yehuda? Tichtiv, as it says in a pasuk, 10 women are going to bake a bread in one oven. So for the fact that it says betanur echad, lechem afui betanur echad karu lechem. Any bread which is baked in an oven is called lechem. But if it's not going to be right afui in one oven, but rather in tanurim, in a few tanurim, which means that first it was like in a pot and then afterwards in an oven, it's not considered bread. So that's why according to Shitat Rabbi Yehuda, he said Masei Ilfas is going to be patur because it's not bread. Why is it patur? Because you needed a few ovens. One was a pot and then the second one was an oven. Okay? Yativ Rabba Rabbi Yosef Achred Rabbi Zera was sitting Rabba and Rabbi Yosef behind Rabbi Zera. Yativ Rabbi Zera Kamad Ula, and Rabbi Zera was sitting in front of Ula. So Amar le Rabba Zera says Rabba to Rabbi Zera, Ba min Meula, ask Ula, hidbik mi bifnim v'itiach mi b'chutz. What happens if you stuck the dough on the inside of the pot, but then you heated it up on the outside of the pot? Okay? So Mao, what's halacha? Amalei comes and he tells him, my Amalei, right? What is he telling you? Right? Why are you asking the question? So where he says, well, what are you asking the question? Because if you're going to tell me that the question is, right? He says, right? What is he going to say? Amali comes and he's going to tell me, this is considered Masei Ilpas, right? Which is the machlok between Rabbi Yochanan and Shakish, right? So basically, that's the Masei Ilpas. The fire is on the outside and the thing is on the inside. So what's its effect then? So he comes and he says, Amalei Rav Yosef Zera, Ba'u mine me'ula, ask Ula, hidbik mi bifnim v'avuka kenegdo. What happens if you put the dough on the inside of the oven, but then you have an avuka on the top, which means that it's on the inside. It's not from the outside. What's halacha? What's he going to tell me? If I'm going to tell him, the majority of the anim do that. because that's how the aniyim do in order to quicken the baking process. So therefore, right, obviously this is also the same machloka between Rabbi Yochanan and Shakish, but that's what the aniyim actually do. Okay, so Amar Ravasi comes and he says, Isa shel ma'aseh sheni. So basically, because of that, what's happening is their kavanah was to say that that's normal to do it, and therefore that's ma'aseh ilpas, and that was the machlok between Rabbi Yochanan and Shakish. Okay, next, Amar Ravasi comes and he says, Isa shel ma'aseh sheni, do of ma'aseh sheni, according to Rabbi Meir, that he says ma'aseh sheni is mamon gavoa, meaning it belongs to Hashem. Petura min chala, you're not obligated in chala, because chala is only obligated in your bread, not bread that belongs to Hashem. But according to Chachamim, you're going to be chayavet chala. You're going to be chayavet in chala. By Masechet Mudalef 38a1, matzah shel ma'aseh sheni, matzav ma'aseh sheni. Mean according to me, you're not going to be tzei chova on Pesach. Why? Because it doesn't belong to you. And according to Chachamim, yes, you're tzei chovato bePesach. Etrog shel ma'aseh sheni, etrog of ma'aseh sheni. According to me, you're not going to be tzei chova b'yom tov. But according to Chachamim, you're going to be tzei chova, right, of an etrog. Right? Why? Because it belongs to you. And obviously, we're going to come back and forth in understanding why, if it belongs to you or not, all the different halachot. Have a wonderful day.